Thank you, Rekha, and thanks everybody for joining to talk about product thinking on your platform. So just quickly, a little bit about us. I'm Winna, this is Abby. We are both principal engineers at Syntasso, which is a platform engineering startup. And one of the things we're doing is focused on building Cradix, which is an open source framework for helping platform engineering teams build their platform APIs. As a team, we have shared experience across platform engineering in our past lives, but we have diverse experience from our backgrounds, but we have shared belief that, according to the sort of team topology model, we do believe that platform teams have incredible potential, especially in scaling organizations. But we have a second belief that a lot of times that potential is left untapped on the table. And we think there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them, I will briefly cover, is that we think platform APIs are a great model of collaboration for platform teams and their applications in the organization, but they're very hard to build. So if you're building your platform APIs, or if you're thinking about platforms, feel free to come by and chat with us, because that's what Cradix helps with. But I'll move quickly along from that. The other element has nothing to do with Cradix and everything to do with the way that platform teams operate. And the other thing that we think holds teams back from delivering true value is that they don't think of themselves as product teams. And this is natural because a lot of times platform engineering teams start as one person who comes from a heavily operational or DevOps background, and the team grows as needed over time, which makes perfect business sense. But what that means is a lot of times product is in a role on the team for quite some time. But we believe that no matter what the size of the team is, and no matter what the roles are on the team, using product thinking day to day to reason about the work that you're doing for the work that you're delivering to your teams is a really effective way to make sure that you're sending out the best value. So we're going to talk today about a couple of tools that any team should be able to pick up. And to go through those tools, we're going to jump out of our Syntasso selves and into an fictional organization where we are members of a platform team. So Abby is going to open up with an example.
Yes, so here at this organization, Winna, myself, and a few others are part of this platform team. Of course, the heroes and heroines of the org, but there are other teams there. We're supporting a large number of stream-aligned teams who are providing business value. And we're in the software space. But then there's also teams not in the software space, but have influence and care about how and what we deliver. So you would think marketing, security, finance. And we view all of these teams as teams we want to work with and we want to understand and support. As just a primer to our architecture, we over the years have decided that isolation by AWS account is a good way to manage security permissions as well as budget. So we're able to track the costs of things by account, and as well as make sure that people have the right permissions. And this is the model we've gone with. And you can imagine that in that model, we get a lot of requests for new accounts. We have at least an account per team, but often a lot more depending on how many domains each team is managing. So this is not an uncommon request for the platform team. And we have a process. It's been a long-lived process. It's tried and true. It's not the most fun thing that we do, but we know that a request comes into Jira, just like all work around the organization gets tracked. We pick that up as a team. We go to our runbook on how to make sure that we configure this correctly, so it's budgeted correctly and secured correctly, and we deliver it back to the team. Now, no one really loves this process, but it works, and we have a whole lot of other fires around the business and around our team that we have to worry about before thinking about improving this at all. We thought, until Shadow IT dropped in. So all of a sudden, we got a message from the finance team telling us that they had had requests for expenses on AWS resources. And they said they have no way of really managing this within their process. It's not really built into the way that they do auditing, and we need to fix this. We need to make sure that everything is billed the correct way so that it can be managed for the audit. They found this out because a team, a streamlined team, a team that we were hoping to provide a service to, had created an account out of band and then went and personally expensed it. And we acknowledged this was not ideal. We have this process. It's not great, but it works. And so it was time for our team to introspect, to think, and to improve this process and improve adoption of it. And so we went straight to our data. This is one of the pros of using a tool like Jira. You can immediately get data on how long it takes for you to do things. And so we kind of graphed out what was happening, and we weren't proud. It turns out this process was just painful enough that it got a lag of like an extra day or two before anyone on our team wanted to pick it up. And then it got an extra couple days of lag when something went wrong with the runbook and we needed to ask for help from the long-term team member who could help us. And then it got another couple days of lag when we made a mistake and had to go back for more information on the request or fix something. And all of a sudden, things that should be really quick and that we thought were fairly quick were taking up to 2 weeks. Sometimes faster, but a lot of times up to 2 weeks. And this was something that, as engineers, we knew just wasn't okay. If we're engineers and we're asked to deliver something, being told to wait 2 weeks or some amount of time, we don't know how much, because of an unknown dependency that you have no control over is just not acceptable. And so of course, these teams went around us. So we looked at our process, and it was clear that this manual aspect of it was causing our team to add lag out of a disinterest in it, and it was causing lag due to manual errors. So we can automate this, we can improve it, we can speed it up. That's exactly what we did. And it was great. We provided a ton of value as a platform team. Finance team was super excited about seeing this being delivered. We told them it's all good. We've discussed this with the teams. They're now aware of the process. The process is great, and they're going to be moving all their previously unbilled accounts over to this new process. The Streamline teams, we did a large engineering all-hands in order to showcase the ease of this process and make sure everyone was on board with it, because there are a lot of new faces around the org, and being able to show them what the process is, it makes sense that they maybe weren't familiar, right? Big scaling org. And of course, internally to our team, we got rid of a bunch of toil. It unblocks us to being able to do a lot more valuable work, and we're really excited about it. So it was a really big success, and the team's really proud of that work.
Yeah, sorry, Abby, to be the bearer of bad news, but fast forward 3 months, and unfortunately, we are right back where we started. So we get a message from finance, again saying, why are we dealing with an expense report that we cannot process? One of your teams has once again created their own account, which meant we needed to reevaluate what we did and do something else. And so in the spirit of this talk, we're going to apply product thinking and use some tools to approach the problem differently and see if we come up with a different solution. Product thinking at the base is about recognizing that your role is creating solutions to customer problems. So Abby mentioned process and following or not following out-of-band rules, regulations, requirements. Those words are not product thinking words. That mindset hasn't shifted. Instead, you want to think about the fact that you exist to serve customers. Those customers have problems, and you want to create solutions that are the best solutions for the problems that they have. And to be fair, we did identify a problem. We identified that it took too long to create the account, so they must be sad. But from a product thinking perspective, we didn't spend long enough in the problem space. We didn't understand that problem from the customer's perspective. We didn't empathize enough to understand what is your problem? What do you actually use this account for? We couldn't answer any of those questions. So to go deeper into problem discovery, we're going to use a theory called jobs to be done. You're probably familiar with it, but I'm going to run through. We think it's especially useful for internal teams or platform engineering teams because we've talked to a lot of teams, platform engineering teams, and they can give us down to the finest spec what their platform looks like, how many services it has, when they put those services on, which services they didn't put on, what tools they use to build their platform, why they don't use certain tools, lots and lots of story around that. But if we ask the question, great, but how do your application teams use those services? How do they access them? What is the story of what happens when they need one? Many, many times, we don't get answers. So we feel like platform teams generally just don't spend enough time understanding who's actually using the thing that they're building. And jobs to be done is a way to think about that. So jobs to be done is a reframing of thinking about products where you think about the fact that a customer buys or uses a product to get a job done. And in this theory, a job has certain characteristics. So a job is solution agnostic. It doesn't care how you're doing it. It's a thing you have to do. So I need to get from point A to point B. A job, part of the completion of a job involves progress. So if I need to get from point A to point B, when I reach B, I have completed the job. Great. The job is fairly stable over time, tends to be. So people have been getting from point A to point B for centuries. The thing that has changed is the products and services that exist to help people do that job. So the products and the services are where innovation is, and they are created to address the job, but they're not part of the job. And finally, every job has a functional aspect. I need to physically go from one place to another, but it has a social dimension, which is if I'm going from one place to another, but it's a date, I might choose a convertible. But if I'm going from one place to another and I have my 2 children in the car, I'm not going to choose a convertible. It also has an emotional element because people do jobs and have feelings about those jobs. They also have feelings about how hard or how easy the product is that they're using and how it impacts the way they can do that job. So every job has multiple dimensions. Hopefully off the top of your head, you can think of a handful of other jobs in your day-to-day life that have these characteristics. So they can be big or small. They can be regular or sudden and unexpected. They can be career-oriented or personal. Cooking a dinner, learning to play an instrument, moving house, moving country, fixing a broken bone, paying taxes, getting a diploma. All of these are jobs that you can break down by the theory to understand more. And the idea is that the theory was created after decades of companies collecting masses and masses of demographic data about customers, what they looked like, what products they liked, what are the flavors, but also like what's your age and where do you live and do you have a degree? And they had mountains of data, and many, many companies would take understandings from that demographic data and try to innovate on it. But the creators of the jobs to be done theory realized that that was really unpredictable. Innovation using that demographic data just didn't really pan out. Sometimes it was a huge success, and other times it was a huge flop. So instead, jobs to be done says, don't focus on the customer. Don't focus on the product. Focus on the job. It's stable, it's always going to exist, and that's where you can really dig in and think about how to innovate. So in my personal life, I have 2 kids, and a couple of years ago, this example came to mind when I was thinking about jobs to be done, because a couple of years ago, my 2 kids needed to be kept entertained while I cooked in the kitchen the next room over. And so I had a job to do. I needed to cook dinner, and I needed my kids to let me do that. So I surveyed my house for products and services that would aid in this effort. And so I said, go sit at the dining table. I'll be right there. So my first product that I went for, of course, these are small kids. They love books. I will give them books. One will get a picture book. One will get a word book. They'll be so happy. I don't even get back into the other room before, Mama, come read it to me. No, I cannot read it to you. I have to cook this rice. Okay, fine. I'll just give you more books, and then you can self-serve. That's the model, right? That didn't work either. They were more frustrated that I didn't drop everything to read all these interesting books. So, all right, fine. I really have to cook this. Here, take some stickers and some tape. Just, it's fine. Do it. Nope. The stickers went to the floor. One kid could use the tape because they can use scissors. The other cried because she couldn't, and then it was a fight. Fine, okay, I'll take those products away. Here, just draw. Crayons went to the floor. Finally, I scanned, and I was like, I was traveling, and I had zippy bags of things, and I just picked them up, and I put them in front of them, and I waited. And I watched them, and one opened it immediately and found things that she wanted to play with. So she found the chapstick and the pen, and she had some paper, and she played. The other zipped it open and took each one out, and then opened it up, and then put one by one back in. 45 minutes later, they're still sitting there playing with the zip pouch, and we have dinner. It was excellent. And I don't think anybody who designs toiletry pouches was really imagining that that product would help me get my job done of cooking dinner. So many times products are imagined to be used one way, and thinking more broadly, they can use many, many ways. But moving away from stories about my children and talking about internal platforms, we can apply this theory to internal platforms as well, thinking about how really they're situated to help application teams do operation jobs, right? That is their goal. And in this situation, as Abby described, application teams need AWS accounts. But as we said, we don't know why. We just know that it takes them a long time, and that probably makes them sad. So using jobs to be done, we want to stay in that space longer and understand more about them. And the way you make that understanding is by doing a very scientific thing called a jobs to be done interview, which is really a fancy label for a conversation. You go and talk to people. There are many frameworks for jobs to be done and the activities around it, but my belief with any product or design things with my background in user research is that they can be as complicated or as simple as you want. And what I want to say to a team that's small and maybe doesn't have a diversity of roles is you can use this, pull it out of your pocket at any time. You can do it in half an hour with a handful of teams. You don't need to do every team in the org. You don't need to spend a quarter on it. And you can identify some teams enough to draw some patterns and go out and talk to them. And the big thing you want to focus on is what were the jobs that they were doing that led them to go to the platform or abandon our poor platform to get that AWS account. So we went and did those interviews, and we came back and discovered some jobs. So we had teams that were doing some cutting-edge incubator, mobile internal demos, and they needed some data storage, but they didn't really care anything about the storage as long as it stored data. But we also had teams that needed to get a feature to production quickly, and they wanted a deployment service. We had an application that was trying to get a whole bunch of new customers in a whole new country up and running and needed new accounts. We also had our auth team, which was finally releasing some more authentication options and wanted to split teams and needed more accounts. So we never would have guessed that these were what these teams were doing, and we discovered through these interviews. We got a whole bunch of learnings. Don't need to read through them all, but you can focus in on, we did validate that we were right, our hunch was right. They were frustrated that it took a while. But we learned a lot more. We learned about why they use AWS accounts specifically, and their experience using it via our platform versus those who bypassed us and went to AWS. And as we look for patterns, we start to understand those multidimensional jobs and problems, they start to emerge. So we understand pretty quickly that application teams in our org, Streamline teams, don't care about AWS accounts. They don't know what the configuration is. They don't care about the options. If you give them one, they are never going to change it or look at it. Furthermore, they have these accounts, and we think they're going to go create this empire of services, when in reality, because they have the account and we can't see, they tell us that we just have one or two services. We create them, they work, we plug them in. We need to be able to check in on them and make sure they're working. We need to get logging and stuff, but we don't generally care. We also saw a pattern of when they used the actual platform versus going to AWS, they were like, talk about things we don't care about. The Jira ticket itself had 15 fields of configuration, none of which any application team knew the answers to. So our platform engineers thought that everybody knew as much as they did, and they didn't know anything. And they didn't want to. They didn't see why they would. So they felt confused, they felt anxious, they took blind guesses, they left things blank, they asked friends, they copied old Jira tickets, all this behavior that's just anti-patterns across the board. So we start to understand these patterns, and by now, we have been firmly rooted in this problem space. We have explored wide, and we have pulled out some patterns, and we want to focus in on, all right, well, we have to do something now. So what is the most valuable thing we can deliver to our customers for the jobs that they are doing? So we think, ultimately, those customers don't care about accounts. They care about services. We also think that customers will never be cloud experts, and they actually never should be. These are problems that we have with the product that we're providing that now we want to go wide to try to discover some solutions. So Abby's going to talk through discovering solutions.
Yes. Thank you, Anna, for sharing how we got a little bit more comfortable with the problem space. And we want to use that same technique of going wide early when we talk about solutions. So we don't want to dive straight into automation and what tools we want to use. We want to think about the experiences. And so when we're going wide with this ideation of solutions, no idea is silly, no idea is not viable, no idea should be turned down early on. Because sometimes even a not viable idea, even a terribly silly idea, can trigger a different idea from another teammate where it all of a sudden becomes viable, it becomes sensible. So we really want to get that. At the same time, we had a rule when we were brainstorming in this that we wanted to make sure we focused on the problem at hand. No, there's no silly idea, but yes, there is a focus for our work. And so we keep those jobs that they're trying to achieve in mind as we go. In my experience, if you want to have great ideation, you need to have active facilitation. You might have visions in your head of like old press rooms, people sitting around shouting things in the cloudy, smoky room, and it's a bit of a joke because that's decades ago, except when you look around your ideation processes at work, you may notice we haven't evolved that much. We often are just ideating as a group, talking out loud, so you get certain voices heard, and you also latch on to early ideas. So instead, what we did is we used a brainwriting workshop. Simple nine square grid, 3x3, and we asked everyone to take one of these sheets and create 3 ideas. 3 ways in which we could approach this job successfully. Once they were done with that, we gave a very short window, like 5 minutes, move that on to the next person. And so you get someone else's sheet. You might have 6 ideas, so you can throw down 3 more ideas without even worrying about what someone else wrote. Or you might be starting to run low, and you can take inspiration from the ones written by someone else and iterate on them or pivot them in a different direction. So we do that on a round 2. We then do that on a 3rd round. And what we end up with is these 1 sheet per person with these 9 ideas. And because we've been iterating on them and taking ideas from each other, they're not all completely unique. So we have to distill these into something we can actually action, something we can do. And so we distilled down those 5 sheets, 9 boxes, into these 8 ideas. And they range from improve Jira to change the interface, because no one wants to use Jira. Sorry, Atlassian, love it. To change the interaction model, like become a consultancy rather than an as a service. Like all these different ideas that you may think, well, that's silly. But again, nothing silly at this stage. But we do need to be able to prioritize and actually take action on something. And at this stage, what we need to worry about is balancing the cost to do something and the value. And the way that you can do that is there's many different ways, but our team loves a good 2x2. So what we did is we created this 2x2 box. And we said, what is the cost to implement this change? And what is its alignment to the value we want to create as a platform, where we are hoping to entice the teams to use our product to get their jobs done? How aligned are we at this point? And so we map out these stickies on here, and now we have to actually select one. And depending on your experience with 2x2s, you may say, well, you always pick the one that's highest here and lowest there, because that's an obvious answer. But in my experience, it isn't scientific like that. You can't just take the lowest cost, high value thing and run with it, because it might be the best decision, but it may not be. And in our case, we had big hopes for our platform. We wanted to provide services on demand rather than accounts, but we weren't there yet. But we knew we wanted to also simplify what we were offering. So we thought, let's not change everything at once. We have a lot of other deadlines. There's some urgency from the finance team to get this all done before some auditing. So let's just take Jira and take AWS accounts and test that simplification idea that we can then roll out to services instead of accounts. But because it's not a science, we don't know if that's the right answer, and so we want feedback to de-risk. So some truths I think about getting feedback is that code's expensive to write, test, maintain, change. We need it, but it's expensive. And when you ask, so you may think we can just ask people their opinion on the idea. But actually, the difference in what people give you as feedback on an idea versus something tangibly in their hands is remarkably different, in my experience. And that we are working in a deeply technical space, but there is a user interaction here that we need to be focused on and intentional about. So, prototyping. Not a thing we talk a lot about in platform engineering spaces, but why not? There is a user interaction here of how to request an account. So we prototyped out Jira. If anyone has not tried to automate Jira in a large organization before, trust me, it's cheaper to do this before trying to get all the fields to line up. And so we took this out to the teams, and we said, what do you think? And they were like, still overwhelmed. They were like, sure, you're showing me this prototype with one field, but I know that our organization has these 20 other fields that are on every ticket. Do I still have to fill those in or not? Are they required? What do I do? So there was this like built-up reservation around Jira. They also were like, this is great because it's simple, but what? What does standard mean? What does PCI compliant mean? What does temporary mean? And they didn't actually know where to find the documentation of what this meant and how they can map it to their context. So we went back to the drawing board. We said, iteration is a part of this process. Let's think about this. We did a really cheap test. So, again, it's not scientific, but we simplified Jira on the floor, and we decide to move to a Slack bot. This removes the concern of people saying, Jira scares me, even if we create a Jira ticket off the back of a Slack bot interaction. And B, we are able to provide feedback to people as they work. So, again, we prototype. Again, that might be uncomfortable if you're in the platform space to think that we do 2 prototypes before ever trying to implement, but it's still cheaper. And in this prototype, we can show people that they're able to get feedback. If they try and request a billable account and they don't have a signed off billable access yet, we tell them it will be a bit longer for you because we need to make sure you're eligible for this. And when people start trying to figure out what of these simplified ideas of accounts they need, we give them feedback. And so, and make sure that only the fields they care about are accessible to them. We get tons of great feedback about this on the quick kind of walk around the office at a coffee break kind of testing. And so we go into delivering mode. This bit is not interesting to most platform engineering teams or most software engineering teams because it's something people are quite good at. Just remember, keep the feedback loops fast. Make sure you go with Agile, Lean, whatever process you do to get it out into production, and make sure that you continue listening for feedback after it's in production. But we weren't done just yet, because we had to understand that concept that jobs aren't just functional. They are also social. They are also emotional. And we still had these teams who had gotten their job done by creating these accounts out of band, but were getting now dinged on trying to create expense reports. But they moved on. Their job was done. They were able to release their software. What do we do with them now? In the first version 3 months ago, we told them, good luck. Like, we have this great process. Migrate. Now we realize that the experience of actually being a part of this product, getting on board with this product, is part of what's going to draw people to choose our product again in the future. So if we want to build that, we need to build the experience of migrating these accounts for them, attaching the billing account, and so forth.
So that's a different solution to lowering the lead time that we require for creating AWS accounts. We took product thinking approaches, some tools that can be as simple as you need them to be, jobs to be done, in this case, to explore the problem space, brainwriting to explore the solution space going wide, and then prototyping to test, and finally delivering. Hopefully, again, if you interact with platform teams or you're on a platform team, these tools can be something that you can pull out to make sure that the work that you're doing next is the right work to do for the customers and the jobs that they have. If you do nothing else and you haven't talked to your teams, please go talk to them. Just have conversations. They will feel more positive about your product even if you don't do anything else. Also, please prototype. It is a really, really cheap way to validate, and it doesn't matter what kind of product you have, it's going to give you really, really good information. If you're interested in more data about the benefit of product in platform teams, Puppet's report last year focused on platform engineering, talks about how more mature and highly effective platform teams often use product management tools or have product functions in their teams. And ThoughtWorks, TechRadar talked about how the best thing they see is that you treat platform teams like any other product team and let them work the way every other product team works. And if you're interested, come by the Craddock Syntasso booth to get some candy. Please get some candy. We have so much. And chat with us about platform APIs. Thank you very much.